section 5.5, standard form of a linear equation. So you guys can follow along your notes. The standard form of a linear equation is ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are all real numbers, and a and b can't be 0. So we already talked about a y-intercept in the last video, and that was when your line crossed over the y-axis. So now we're going to take a look at y-intercepts and as well as x-intercepts. So the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis at that point. So for this first example, it says, what are the x and y-intercepts of the graph of 3x plus 4y equals 24? So in order to find the x and y-intercepts, we'll do x first. So the x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. So what we're going to be doing is plugging in 0 into our equation for y to solve for x. So we get 3x plus 4 times 0 equals 24. Now 4 times 0 is just 0, so that goes away. So we're left with 3x equals 24. Now to get this 3 to the other side, inverse operations, we need to divide, and we get that x equals 8. So that's your x-intercept. It crosses the x-axis at 8. So similarly, we're going to do the same thing for y. So for the y-intercept is when x is 0. So we're going to plug in 0 for x instead of y. So we get 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 24. 3 times 0 cancels out, and we're left with 4y equals 24. Divide by 4. Divide by 4, and we get that y equals 6. So your graph crosses the y-axis at positive 6. So the next problem is for you to try on your own. It's the same thing, finding the x and y intercepts for the following graph. Okay, next up, we want to graph this equation, x minus 2y equals negative 2, using the x and y intercepts. So the same way as what we did for example 1, we're going to first find the x-intercept, which is when we plug in 0 for y. So we get x minus 2 times 0 equals negative 2. These terms cancel, and you're left with x equals negative 2. Now I can graph that right away. X negative 2 is 2 to the left of your origin on the x-axis. So that makes a point right there. Now the next thing we're doing is the y-intercept. Just like we did before, we're going to set x equal to 0 and solve for y. So we get 0 minus 2y equals negative 2. Your 0 cancels, and you're left with negative 2y equals negative 2. And we want to get this y alone, so we need to divide by negative 2 on both sides, and we get that y equals positive 1. So we can graph this. Y at positive 1 is 1 up from the origin. And now we have our 2 coordinate points, and we can connect these points to create a straight line. So that was really bad. Let's redo it. And then we're going to follow this the other way as well. Okay? So you can graph any equation by finding the x and y intercepts, just as we did there. So next up, we have 2 more equations to graph. Now these are different because each equation only has one variable. This first equation says that x equals 3. That means for any value of y, even though there's no y, x is always 3. So we want to find x being 3 on our axis. This point right above it is 3, 1, so x is 3. This point is 3, 2, so x is 3. This point is 3, 3, so x is 3. And the same thing down here. So when x equals some number without y, it's always a vertical line. Okay? And we can draw our arrows on the end. So if you think about this, instead of being x equals some number, this is y equals some number. So this is going to be a horizontal line at y equals 3. Whatever you plug in for x, there's no spot for it. So it will always be a horizontal line at y equaling 3. Okay? So this is always vertical, and this is always a horizontal line. Okay? So last up is a word problem. If I can even X this out. Okay, so last up is a word problem. So this says that a media download store sells songs for $1 each and movies for $12 each. You have to spend $60. Write and graph an equation that describes the items that you can purchase. What are 3 combinations of numbers of songs and movies that you can purchase? So, first up, we have movies and songs. So let's let X equal the number of songs, and let's let Y equal the number of movies. So we know that the total has to equal $60. So we need to add together the number of songs and their price to the number of movies and their price. So each song sells for $1. So X times 1 is the price of all the songs that you're going to buy. And then same thing goes for movies. They're $12 each, so you're going to multiply 12 to the number of movies you buy, and the total of those two are going to equal 60. So this is our equation. Now, in order to graph this, I want to do it by intercepts, okay? So let's first do the x-intercept, which is when y is 0. Let me circle this so we don't lose it. Y being 0 means that x would equal positive 60. Now our y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we get that 12y equals 60, meaning that y equals 5. So obviously we don't have 60 lines on our graph to graph this 60. So let's just say that this is 20, 40, 60 right here. So our x-intercept is 60 and our y-intercept is 5. Okay? Now when we connect these 2 points to create a line, I only want to connect them in this first quadrant because it wouldn't necessarily make sense for us to go into the negatives, because if I continued on below this this x-coordinate, x-intercept, I would have negative y, negative movies bought, and that doesn't make sense. And the same thing goes for if I went above, if I continued this line above this y-intercept, I would have less than 0 songs purchased, and that doesn't make sense. So all of these are examples of combinations of songs and movies that you could buy. So if you chose to pick this coordinate point as a point, that is a combination, that is 100% right. Right here, right here, right here. These are all combinations of the amounts of movies and the amount of songs that you can buy to spend $60 or less. And that's it, guys. Have a great night.